And good evening, everyone. We are now in that season of after Juneteenth. It is official, and I think this evening's dialogue is the perfect way to begin after Juneteenth and acknowledging and continuing to celebrate ourselves and those brothers and sisters who are out there representing the lived Black experience. And I think tonight's guest is an awesome start for a conversation when it comes to the lived Black experience and those people who are really in the spotlight representing. What say you, Sister Care?
I am so excited for this conversation.
Yes.
I am really trying to hold it together. I am a huge fan of Miss Alexander. I have been watching her since I was very young. She has inspired so much of who I wanted to be growing up, and it's just amazing to have an opportunity to talk with her and learn more about her. So I'm very excited for this conversation.
And I am so excited for you, our resident facilitator, to have this opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to experiencing this. Sister Erica, um, it's interesting. I've met her a few times throughout the years, and but really had a chance to it would take moving out here to Flagstaff to learn more about her humble beginnings, which began right here in northern Arizona. You know, you get to Hollywood and New York, and you know we don't hear about Winslow and Flagstaff, and so I really think that's one of the exciting um, things about having her here to be able to talk about and hear about her. And I certainly I wish that you would really ask her about what that was like growing up, being born in Winslow and then being raised right here in Flagstaff, Arizona, where most people are like, Flag what?
It's my very first question.
Yeah, you know,
I am
so
ready for it. Yes.
I'm excited for you having this opportunity. I'm excited to have Sister Erica here. She's such a beautiful soul, and I've always admired that about her. She's remained true to herself and her people, and now have since we've been living out here because we're not natives, right? Although it
Mhm.
feels like we've been out here a pretty long time, but now I can for me it I can see where that peace, um just that humbleness, because that's kind of the people that I have encountered here. Our Black community here is very small, but those who are homegrown Flagstaff and meeting people from Winslow, there's just that humbleness, just that kind spirit, and that's how I describe this sister. So let's, before we bring her on, for those who are unfortunate, if you don't know who this sister is, we're going to share a pretty recent clip of who, and that will let you see who she is, and maybe you'll be like, "Ah, I do know this woman. I've seen her." So let's share a bit of that.
Here on the Get Out black carpet with the beautiful, the talented Erika Alexander. We're so excited to see you back on the screen, entertaining us and enjoying the many talents that we've seen from you over the years.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Obviously, Jordan Peele wrote a really wonderful movie. He asked me to be a part of it. And so I'm glad to be here. And a lot of people I admire in this movie. But what I like about it is that it's an independent film, basically. And it's from somebody who's been in the business for a while, who's known for comedy, who's now doing horror. So I'm really proud of him. I was a person, I think he brought on to do a specific role and to kind of keep it close to my chest. So that's how I learned about it. I learned about it at like any other maybe project. I went in on it, didn't think too much about it. And then it came up, and it was right at the time I was doing Queen Sugar and a few other things. I was one of Hillary Clinton's lead surrogates, and they sent me all over. And I didn't know if I could adjust the time. And he wrote me a beautiful letter and said, "No, Erika, we need you to be a part of this. You did a great job, and I'd love if you come." And when somebody asks you like that, you go where you're invited, obviously. But when somebody makes a personal appeal to you like he did, it means it's all the more special. So that's how I got to be in this film.
We know you're getting ready to head in because we're getting ready to watch the film. Before we let you go, please give us an update on what you've been up to, because we've been missing seeing you.
I've been missing seeing. I've been in Queen Sugar. I obviously in this Get Out. I have a comic book. Some people know about it, but it's called Concrete Park. It's in volume 3 right now, and people should look forward to seeing that. I also wrote a movie about the Boys Choir of Harlem, and we hope to be in production for that very soon. So I'm a writer and a producer, and it's been difficult to try to transition and teach myself a new skill set, but I have. And a lot of the time that people haven't seen me, I've been trying to, I think, broaden my horizons and my opportunities by learning how to write and be a producer. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, Erika,
a new collaboration with Joss Whedon. He came to me and we're working on something with his Giles character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer for Dark Horse. So yes.
Well, it's always a pleasure to see you. We look forward to seeing you in the film. Thank you for stopping to chat with us.
And I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.
I'm so excited. So without further ado, Sister Kara, take us away. See you on the other side.
Thank you. It is my honor, audience, to introduce you to Miss Erika Alexander. She is a beloved actress for her iconic acting roles as Maxine Shaw on Living Single, Detective Latoya in Get Out, Cousin Pam on The Cosby Show, Perenna on DC Comics, Black Lightning, Linda Diggs in Wutang and American Saga, Barbara Ballard in Run the World, and most recently as Meredith Lockhart, Swimming with Sharks, and as Abby Keegan in the critically acclaimed Apple Plus series, Shining Girls, starring Elizabeth Moss. Miss Alexander wears many hats, including actress, trailblazing activist, entrepreneur, creator, producer, director, and she is one of the country's boldest, most daring, and powerful voices. As a creator, she recognizes the power of storytelling. She believes that though content must be entertaining, when carefully constructed, stories have tremendous capacity to create impact and meaningful social change. As co-founder of Color Farm Media, she is on a mission to bring greater equity, inclusion, and diverse representation to both media and electoral politics. Welcome, Erika Alexander.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to be here. This is exciting and an opportunity of first, because I haven't had a chance to meet or talk to the community where I was born and raised ever like this. So thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, let's start right there then. I'd love for you to tell us what it was like for you growing up in Flagstaff, because we have a lot of conversations now about what it's like to be Black on the mountain, but I'm very curious to know, what was it like for you growing up here?
It was, I think at the time that I was there, I was born in 1969 in Winslow, and then moved very shortly after to Flagstaff. That it was pretty difficult because of our circumstances. It wasn't unusual in America as Black family to have circumstances that were difficult, and we were one of them. So I always say I spent the first 11 years of my life in a hotel called Starlight off of Route 66, actually Twilight Hotel. And I was one of 6. My mother and father were both orphans, and my father was a Kojic preacher, and my mother was a teacher, an educator. And we were living right there on Route 66, on Mountain View Avenue. And the house that we rented from the hotel was just offside of it. And it was basically like a 2-bedroom, simple structure. And we lived there the whole time I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, but it was on the east side of the tracks as opposed to the west side. Most of the Black people lived on the west side of the tracks. And I loved it because we were surrounded by trees. We looked at Mount Eldon the entire time. That was our view before I even knew that views were a thing. That people would pay for views. We always had that. So no matter how much or how little money we had beauty in Northern Arizona, which is now a place that people go to stay and pay a pretty penny to be there. But at the time, it was like truckers going through, like a pass-through town for trains and truckers. And so that's what it was like. I used to knock on doors and ask for jobs, and my brothers used to shovel snow. I always say that getting getting 50 cents or 25 cents to take out trash or sweep the porch was one thing. But if they got $20, that's because they were out there shoveling that heavy snow. And that was pretty mythological. So a $20 bill was mythological. That's what it was like. But I have to say, I'm an outdoor free range kid because of it. And that's how I think about life. Very much being free.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because, I think people tend to think of Black people or Black families living in mountain towns as kind of like an anomaly, but really it's not. And for you to talk about just the importance of the beauty of nature for you and the connection to freedom in particular is really interesting. So did you spend most of your time just outdoors or hiking or doing those sorts of things? And do you still do that now?
Yes, Kara. I mean, I don't still do it now as much as I did then. It was harder to do once we moved away from places that had that outdoor sort of environment. We moved to just outside of Poughkeepsie, New York, because my father was being an associate pastor with the Lutheran church there before he went to Lutheran seminary in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, it even got more difficult. It was just a city environment changes everything. But in Arizona, to be outdoors was everything. We learned archery in school. I went to kindergarten at Guadalupe and then started first and second in at Mount Eldon Elementary School that turned to Killip School. And my sisters and brother went to what is that? I think it was East Side High or something, and then the other one Coconino, and they were track stars, and we were all the fastest people in the school. There was, I think, 1 or 2 Black families in the school, and I was the only Black person in class because my sisters and brothers were all in the school, but in different classes, and you just were always outdoors. We had recess then. I'm surprised that a lot of students don't have recess now, but recess was a big deal. And so we learned also, all sorts of sports, but also we learned square dancing and all this other stuff that people go, how do you know that? And I go, I grew up in a northern town. And so also it wasn't just the relationship with the outdoors. It was the relationship with the Hopi, Navajo, and Mexican and German Lutheran that were up there. And so many activities connected to the culture were outdoors.
Yeah, that's really interesting because one of the things that we keep having conversations about is why it's so important for us to have these sorts of conversations and hear and learn and understand about the Black experience in Flagstaff and throughout the country. But what occurs to me as you're talking is just how rich your experience was, and for so many of us who are like the only or one of the few who look like us, that added layer of richness of our experience because we're constantly learning from the experiences and lived experiences of other people and other cultures. So is that something that you've seen that you bring into some of your different roles, or how has that impacted you throughout your life?
It's meant everything. I think it's when you're thrown into a pot where people think we're a monolith as Black people, and you come off as different, they can't quite put their finger on it. I mean, they know it's different from what they've seen because a lot of the stuff they've seen has been in a very so-called urban environment. And that's even a buzzword that means certain things. But I think when I walked in the room, and I have to say that I thought about this after a while when I first walked into my first audition and got the part, I was thinking, why would they hire me? I'm so not as sort of like bombastic and sort of like, all head swiveling like many of the I was 14 when I did actresses that were there. Was so much stiller and sort of self-possessed. And they told me later on that they said, how did you think there was even um, a competition? And I'm thinking it's not that. It's just that those girls have been in this school, this program longer, and I've only been here for 5 weeks. And they said, yes, but there's something about you that's very quiet and strong. And I started thinking about how I was raised. That if you think about film acting is here. And all this doesn't really play as much, all of that. It plays very quietly. The power of De Niro and those types of people is because they're engaging with you and connecting with you on a very, strong, but, less sort of, I don't know, dramatic level. And that turned out, what I thought was boring about me turned out to be the thing that made me a screen presence. I didn't know that. So thank you, Northern Arizona.
Well, and it's so true. I think one of the things that you are known for is that even for what may seem like the smallest of appearances in a film or a TV show, the characters that you portray are so rich and impactful in how you come across on stage and on screen. So, first of all, I'm curious, how much of you would you say that we're seeing in each of those different roles? Is that just Erika that we're seeing on screen, or are you changing that for each role?
I was asked that recently, and I started to really think about it. And I said, because I've always been raised to be very humble, I would always say, well, you come there and the character is there and blah, blah, blah. But the character doesn't exist outside of you, can't exist outside the person. If you hired me to do a role versus you hire Octavia Spencer to do a role versus you hire Taraji P. Henson, you will see 3 different versions of that same role because each one of us has a different way to be. So everything that I bring to a character comes from me. The lines don't come from me. The intention of the character doesn't come from me. The interior life might be different on the page, but the interior life I've lived is being expressed through me. And so I'd like to think that it's a collaboration for real. But if Miles Davis is playing a trumpet, it's different from another musician playing that same trumpet. And that's how I like to say is that I'm playing it with my instrument, my entire human being, my entire past experiences, and my present point of view. But what I'm not doing is creating the character that I'm been asked to play from the beginning. There is a different collaborator that should be respected for that. But once I get in there, it is now mine to interpret, and I'm doing it through my interpretation.
Yeah. One of the things that, as you talk about that in terms of respecting the vision of the filmmaker, there's so many actors that we hear talk about, the producers or the screenwriter gave me this character and I made it my own. I changed the lines or I did these different things. So for you, is that just part of the cultural upbringing or the respect that you grew up with, that you try and preserve that integrity of their vision, or what gives you that level of respect for the screenwriter?
Because I know that they've been living with that a long time, and they've had to do a certain amount of even editing to even be there. So there's a respect given to the original creator that it came out of their mind and their experience first. But again, to get on the screen, whether it's television, TV, sitcom, stage, you have, unless they're going to get up and do it as well, which there are people who are writers and um, screenwriters and performers, like Whoopi Goldberg. She did her first. Then you are telling that story through other people, and that casting is consequential because it changes and should change in their hands. They should own it. I shouldn't be worried about whether the writer thinks I can do it or not, or how I'm going to interpret it. They obviously picked me because they saw something within me that was familiar to the material and was going to create some kind of synergy. But I don't spend my time thinking, how do they want this? Now I'm like, this is how I see it. You'll direct me if you think I'm going off, or we'll talk about it or come to a compromise. But I'm also on the ground exploring things. If you're in sitcom, you're performing for an audience and the camera. You're doing two things at once. It's actually pretty difficult if you think about it. But once you get the hang of it, it's a dance. And the person that comes in, that's the third collaborator, beside the writers and the crew and all that, is the audience. They have a relationship and conversation with you, and their jokes that they don't find funny. They don't. It doesn't matter how we play them. And then there are things we're doing, like they used to cut on me eating, and they would find that very funny. And so then they, and so they have a say. So I like to say that I'm there in service to it, but I'm not in servitude of it. I have to have a collaboration.
It's wonderful. Speaking of the richness of the characters that you bring to the screen, I think one of the things that has been so impactful about your various roles, at least for me, is seeing a Black woman in roles that we have not traditionally been seen in before, whether it's playing a detective or a principal or a lawyer, and all of those different roles. It's just so powerful that you play them so naturally. So it's not, this is the Black whatever. It's just who you are. And it's just the role that you are portraying. You're just the person. So why is that sort of representation so important? Why is it important to be able to just slide into that role and not have it be the Black lawyer or the Black whatever?
Because that's not how I grew up. I knew I was a Black person in Arizona. I really didn't know that. But the culture I grew up with, if somebody said, well, what's your culture? I said, well, Black is defined by a version that's typical. I don't fit into. I just don't. I fit into it from a point of view being in Northern Arizona, where I had a lot of time to isolate and become a person, not just a race and not just a gender, but be free to become who I was. And inside of that, I always say I'm part Navajo, I'm part Hopi and Mexican and all the other things that I'm in. I'm also a Black person with a Kojic father and 2 orphans as parents. And like I said, the isolation and being siloed in Northern Arizona is real too, because you have a relationship with nature and the wind and living in a way that a lot of people don't get to have because there's so many noises, cars, traffic, light noise, everything, but not there. I mean, the sound of real wilderness is very loud to me, but it's the most quiet thing ever. If you get away, if you're in the city, you see how loud things really are, and you get somewhere that you're in nature and go, wow, listen to those sounds. And I think that helps me think about even my improvisation skills in a space. You see, I'm very physical, but I was a physical girl. I'm going to jump over things and do things. You can see that in the way I move. People always try to pin my accent down. I think people in Northern or Arizona don't have much of an accent that can be imitated. It's not like, a Boston accent or a New York accent. And I say New York, in a certain Long Island, it's not that. that Midwest feeling is different too. If you're in Illinois and, you know, that you can hear it, but I don't know if you can hear it so much, or I don't. And I love that that allowed me to step into things. And as you say, just be the lawyer. Mm-hmm. I wasn't coming with all that, those undergarments. I was able to dress in it and then become an interesting person. I like to think that that's what I've done partly. Again, those improvisational skills come from also being okay with taking risks in silence and not having to perform all the time. And if you're not competing against other people, which you are in sometimes big cities, you can relax into things and say, you know what? It's a give and take. And all that comes from growing up in a different space that's a little bit more alien than the world we see on TV and film, especially for Black people.
We're getting a lot of different comments in the chat here on Facebook and our live stream. Somebody just said Northern Arizona.
I see his stuff.
Miss Kimberly Robinson, who you've met in the conversations leading up to this, and she is the program coordinator for the Live Black Experience, said Northern Arizona is a different vibe. Where we are born becomes a part of us, and that's so clear in what you've said. And I want to remind those that are joining us tonight and watching on our live stream, if you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we can work them into our conversation. We would love to bring you into the conversation with us. So I know we're going to get into this more in a future conversation for sure, but I would feel absolutely remiss if I did not bring up the impact of Maxine Shaw, attorney at law. That was just, I remember being a kid and having so many others that I grew up with, and especially Black girls, go from those dreams of being, I want to be a ballerina, or I want to be a teacher, I want to be a singer, I want to be a dancer, all of those kind of traditional things, to suddenly the dream was to become a lawyer. And for me, it was seeing that character and finding passion for the law and for politics and all of those things. Why do you think that character was so impactful for people?
There was a time, there was a buildup to it from different world, obviously the Cosby Show. There were examples of it in Claire Huxtable, in Whoopi Goldberg. If you look at my hair, the way that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. The way that it connected with the mainstream audience was right in a nice space where women were not obligated just by their religious association or their, you know, their degrees, but their personality and who they wanted and what they wanted to be. And there was freedom. It was sort of an understanding that women had more control over their bodies and over their sexual choices and how they approached it. And it didn't seem to be wrong in everything that was in the moment for her to be so sure of herself. Like, she understood what she wanted. She went for it. She did, was unapologetic. And she wasn't afraid to own her power. She also wasn't as sentimental when she said things. She didn't come back and say, you know, I might have said that wrong. She didn't do that. She said it, she meant it, and she was fair. And I think people saw her mischievousness and her rawness, but they also saw that, you know, Max is telling the truth, you know, and they also saw she was a little greedy and selfish. Like, men had been written like that for years, but not many girls or women. And so you had people like Pippi Longstocking and people like that were being written as, you know, pioneers of the tomboy. She was a tomboy in a skirt. She was a tomboy with a job, a tomboy, you know, who had, I think, the power of her sensuality to step out. So that's what I like to think, that Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, was in a space that was made for her by all the other things that came before. But also, to that point, I had lived a life that I was given permission a long time before I came to that, to be free to challenge men. And you see that she does. And my father, who was a preacher and was very much, God in crisis, traditional and can be strict, but he liked that he had a daughter. I was fourth. So there's two boys, a girl, and then me. The girl was called Princess, and I was Erika, and I was a tomboy, and he liked that. I have scars all over my legs. He liked that I ran like a wild child with the guys and kept up. I think that was even I couldn't have chosen where I was born, the position I was born, but also my mother. Now, to give props to my mom, who very much wanted me to wear dresses and walk straight and speak correctly and those types of things. You see that in Mac's countenance, the way she loves the written word, and you can see that she's educated and those types of things. You can't deny that she's got herself together, but I love that edginess. And that's all, again, that's where I was born, how I was raised. And that's also me. That's who you're seeing. And I like to, again, just give a little, pat on the back to say, I felt comfortable being myself, and that role came in and I was myself within it.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience. What would be your advice to young entertainers who grow up different than those in their communities?
Have courage. The human condition is the tie that binds. We may come from different communities, but I think that we meet each other and communicate in a dimension that doesn't stray too far from just, what it is to be human. You can be in New York or Mumbai and those types of places and still have a broken heart, still know what it is to be hurt or violated, know what it is to be successful or dream, be young. That's not different. What it is your expression of it that's different. And you have to have courage to believe that you are the one. You are the one they're looking for. You also have to test that. It's not just assuming those positions. You have to test that assumption and go and perform in plays when you can. Any place where you can put yourself out there in front of an audience. Because if someone says you have to play, over and over again and put that, basketball in the net and know your way around a basketball court and be prepared. But then actors often only act once or twice a year, if that at all. And that's on the professional scale. But if you're in an amateur space, you're probably doing it less. And that's unacceptable. You have to find some place where you can matriculate and push yourself, learn Shakespeare, learn August Wilson plays, read soldier stories, read Tennessee Williams, read. You should be reading and going to museums and attending services, spiritually outside, inside. Learn, because that's all telling you how to perform it when you see it. So when you go in there, you won't think, how can I be this lawyer? You think, oh, I met this woman who was very interesting. And then you can put a little bit of her in there, or that's like my auntie. How would she do this? And that tells you. Also, there's all these great plays and TV shows. You can go look and see these magnificent performances, and you should see why and compare why. Different actors. There's different actors doing Hamlet. You see Kenneth Branagh, Laurence Olivier, and you can see Denzel Washington doing. Go look. Be a part of it. Go to find yourself, be very active in creator space. Creator space is important. You cannot say that you're far away from a creator space you can be in the most remote place and go find someone who's doing something creative or learn something from someone, whether it's how to print newspapers and all. Learn, just keep learning, and please read. A lot of people don't read. They think that getting on your phone and looking at something real quick is read. Because you need it.
I love that. Dr. Guthrie is asking, what was the impact on you when your mother worked in Head Start at the Murdoch Center in the 1970s and 80s?
I used to go see her at that center, and I'd like to say that she always looked like she was in a position that she was running it. She was administrator there and sometime in a teacher, and she ran her classrooms in a way that were very like making the child get up and do things. She would spend her own money to make crafts or things that we'd have to play with, as opposed to just reading about them. So if we were going to measure and learn measuring, there was a big thing of rice where you could take the measuring cup and measure half and measure this and then do that. And she also would teach people with special needs and special education. So whether they were deaf or blind, she would find ways to create textures and different listening experiences. And she was all about bringing in culture. She would have Native American dancers come in, teach language, everything. I owe her so much thanks that she was so curious. And when I think about it, she was much younger than I am now. So, I think it's pretty phenomenal to have 6 kids eventually and be an orphan and have created a space where children could play and be themselves and explore. I mean, we used to go out and we'd get, a bag and pick pine cones and then come in and put them, glue in them and roll them around and sprinkle stuff, glitter and take them home. And that's also how we made a little money. The family take the spray snow and make centerpieces and put candles on them and hot glue and then go around and try to sell centerpieces at Thanksgiving. That's all my mother. She was a big crafts person. She loved everything, quilting, everything. I'm still her. I'm collecting things left and right. So that was a big deal. And that Head Start place was like her lab for experimentation with children and learning. And I benefited from that to this day. That's my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Crystal Sheridan asked, and if we can, sorry, I'm losing a good part of my screen here, but she said, it's so exciting to see your success and thank you for sharing your experiences and representing Flagstaff, powerful women and persons of color. Did you feel you faced any struggles with identity and representation in the Northern Arizona community? And did you have any particularly impactful experiences?
I was facing struggles that I would only be apparent to me probably when I grew up and understood them. Racism was obviously there. Representation is difficult anywhere. There's so few of Black people, and that was the case then. Yeah, it was tough. Some of the pushback I got were from other Black people. I remember this family came to town, would come and sometime leave almost just as quickly. And there was this young man who was in my grade. And one of the things he did was to call me a Black monkey. And I was in shock because I was like, aren't you Black too? But he did it to impress his white friends. Mm-hmm. And it was to call me out in a way. And I was darker than him. I remember being hurt and trying to avoid him in the hallways at Mount Eldon because I didn't know how to be. He was targeting me. And I know now, looking back, that he was just trying to fit in. And it was at a time when we start to learn that we were different. At first, it didn't stick out so much. It didn't seem to matter. I'm not saying it wasn't there. It just didn't matter. And then when you start to have puberty, literally, they just stop playing with you. The white girls that were my friends, they literally dropped off of a Filipino girl on me, literally, and said, "Would you play with?" And I won't say her name. I'll just say her name was Angela because it was with Angela because we want to hang out with the cool girls, and if she's with us, they want to hang out with us. Mm-hmm. But what is implied there is that she was hanging out with me. That they had already dumped me. They didn't tell me that.
Yeah. And
I remember going, "Oh, okay, oh, no problem." And then Angela was like, let's go over there. Let's go over here. I was like, no, we'll play over here. And I remember getting irritated because I didn't know that they didn't even have the presence of mind to go and say, well, will you play with Erika? They just automatically had dumped me. And the disregard, that scars you for life. And I've had problems with friendships to this day from the trauma that brought up. I've had beautiful relationships with Mexican children and white children that I wish had gone on, but I moved away. But the struggles of identity and representation came from only seeing Black people mostly in books and textbooks that talked about slavery. And they did come over and touch my hair. And I mean, like at the time, you didn't know. I'm just hoping that they get through that paragraph because it wasn't a whole like chapter on slavery, but how quickly could they get through that paragraph so I could go back to being Erika and not being a slave. And so when Roots came, and I think people for the first time saw what we'd gone through and in context of just not being victims, that was a big deal. And the town went silent. They didn't know how to deal with that. But I was glad because now I understood us as not just being people who were preyed upon. I saw the context of the United States, the context of the horrible crime that it was.
One of our, Afeni Shakur was a huge influence on shaping Deepak Shakur's art and philosophy. How did your parents influence your art and politics?
Well, they were pastors, both of them, one song ministry and the other one in, preaching. It was huge. We were those good kids. If you told us what to do, we did it. That has to do with some of my philosophy of, I'm not particularly religious anymore, but I do live by the golden rule. I believe in karma. I try to do all the good that I can for everyone I can while I can. I believe that what you give, you get to keep. And I believe that I'm in service to a greater good that I may not live to see, but I'm in obligation to work for it because of all the people who made it possible for me to be here. That comes from their Christian background, and I'm grateful for it. But what I'm not is what I learned during that time was that they were a lot of hippies up in Flagstaff, and one day they took down a big old cross. We were at some church because he was an evangelist. He didn't have a home church, and they said, "God is arisen. God is arisen. Jesus is arisen. Jesus is arisen." Excuse me. We do not follow dead God, and I didn't know religion could change till they dropped that big old cross off and then said what they're going to do. I said, wait a minute, this can change. I thought I was locked in. So then my philosophy started to take over. My art and philosophy is based on freedom that I got to have my own thoughts and also to go to the library and read about people and shape my own way and be, again, free to hurt myself and then get back up again. And I can't say enough to how that's important for building confidence in yourself. And also learning valuable lessons about how you can get hurt if you're not careful and how accidents just happen and you're lucky to keep standing. But my philosophy comes from, I saw so many different types of cultures and they weren't in competition with each other. They were right next to each other. And so it's a huge way to shape a child, but also their biggest influence on my arts and politics was the freedom to be me and them not trying to steer. They didn't have time to, thank God. But that freedom you see in everything that I hope that I make.
Yeah. With that, the prior question and the focus on just, what was your experience and you sharing that story of the impact of those other children's behavior. We have another question from the audience asking your thoughts on preserving or improving the Black community or history or the experience in Flagstaff. And that seems like such a core such a core question to that point that you were making, just in actually educating people on what that experience was for you and the impact that that had on you. What are your thoughts on just the importance of preserving those stories or sharing those stories and communicating that broader narrative?
Storytellers, creators. I think there is a stereotype of what the Southwest is and or isn't. I think the newest one came from Waiting to Exhale. I think it was the first time they saw Black people in Arizona. And that was a good story. And that's how people say, oh, well, isn't it desert? Isn't it this? We need storytellers to tell their stories, whether it's in books and films and all these other spaces, and to show us how we've lived. We have stories of New York. We have stories of the South, of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and all these places. And even that can be stereotypical, but there are tons of stories about people in those places. Very few stories about the Southwest outside of Westerns. And when they put people of color in Westerns, it always seems like it's some sort of comic book version. You know what I mean? You're here telling people what we're doing and with two guns and all that mess. And yet there's a really rich, wonderful story of a modern person of color in northern Arizona. And so I'm writing a memoir that's really something more about my parents and their growing up in the Southwest. And that'll be part of the story I'll tell. And then I'm hoping to one day be in collaboration, create and found a film festival that will tell stories of the Southwest, and it become as big as Sundance has, or even Tribeca. That's
amazing. And I love what you say about the importance of storytelling. And I thanks to my brother, I grew up with some love for comic books, and I know that one of the series that you referenced in the interview with you that we watched at the beginning of this was the Giles series that you worked on with Joss Whedon. And in one of the interviews about that series, you talked about the importance of storytelling, having the familiarity with our own lives and lived experiences. So can you just talk more about why is storytelling and that shared lived experience so important to you? Oh, it looks like you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. Everything that I've done up till now has been because of my story. The disruptive nature of me being in a city space, but being a mountain kid was the reason why I got, I think, a role. How I approach a character, whether it's a Maxine Shaw or the other characters that I've played, is because I have the advantage of having seen, standing right next to each other, different cultures, but also not thinking that I had to be any one of them to portray it. I got to play a lot. I played. And so I think that those things are important. With Joss Whedon, when he asked me to do the Giles spinoff with him, it's because he saw Concrete Park. So anybody who sees Concrete Park is a series, it's volume 1 and volume 2. It was my creative partner, Tony Purrier, who happened to be my husband at the time, not husband anymore, but we still collaborate on a lot of things. And Dark Horse actually put out the comic book. But we only did that because we were trying to sell a science fiction series, and Hollywood executive told us that Black people did like science fiction because they didn't see themselves in the future here in LA. And so we were so tired of trying to sell this future with Black and brown, all sorts of people, everybody in it, that Tony said, oh, forget it, I'll draw it. And he taught himself after 50 how to draw, there you are, comics. And we created Concrete Park. That was out of the need to tell different stories. That led to the opportunity of when Joss Whedon needed a woman of color, or he requested a woman of color to create a comic book with spinoff. They said, well, we know one, Erika Alexander. And suddenly there I was writing Giles, a 4-person series. And that's Giles as a teenager, come back as a teenager in a city school, and he falls in love with a 200-year-old black girl vampire. That's huge. Yeah. But again, I wouldn't have had that unless I started to create something that I didn't see, and having the obstacle come before me created more opportunity after it. But I didn't sit there and complain more than I just taught myself new skills. So what you're seeing is me having opportunity, but maybe not being able to break glass ceilings without having to, again, confront racism and phobias, genderism, ageism, all these things still apply. I'm out here working on it. So that's how Giles came to be. And it was a really great experience, by the way, and I'm grateful for it.
That's amazing. As you talk about creating those spaces for yourself and moving beyond some of those assertions, right? That Black people don't see themselves in the future, so there's no need for us to do this. It made me think instantly of, and anybody who's watching who's seen any of these before knows that this is a story that I always bring up in the conversation of why we do this Live Black Experience project. And it's from when we were first starting with this project and doing some community town halls. We had one that was focused on youth. And during that, a young Black girl in our community shared that she and another classmate were the only two Black people in her class. And they asked their teacher about doing a lesson on Black History Month, because February was either they were in the midst of it or it was coming up. And being told by that teacher, well, there's too few of you for us to do that, for that to matter for our class. And I just think of that in terms of, the work that you're doing and telling these stories and telling folks like those girls or like anyone in our community who doesn't see themselves in those roles or filling those spaces or into the future, like Afrofuturism. You're showing them that they do belong in those spaces and they are part of those narratives. And if other people are telling us that we can't be, then we can still create it for ourselves. So that's just such a powerful thing that you're doing, and I thank you for it. And we have this comment up from our program coordinator. Producers and directors have been wrong about the relationship between Black Americans and science fiction for decades. So we are certainly grateful to you for helping to dispel those misconceptions and moving us into that future.
For sure. I mean, the industry has paid so much lip service to diversity and development for all these years. And to actually address it in Hollywood, we have to reckon with ongoing systemic biases and racism and all these things. And there's just a few executives that really have anticipated the audience change that's going on, certainly global collaborations that are happening. You can look at Black Panther and all these things coming through now through Disney and Marvel and those types of spaces, but there's Afro beats and all these other things that are happening that are moving music, K-pop and that type of a thing. So to be talking about something multiracial or like non-homogenous grassroots movements, that's what the future is. And I'm telling you, before all of this was radioactive. I mean, every single last thing was radioactive. But I thought recently, I was even surprised that someone was talking about, I think on NPR, like native food as food, gourmet food. And I said, oh my goodness, duh. We don't really understand what that means. We're eating native foods, corn and maize and all these other things. And if you're in certain places, you might, but seeing them now in spaces where they're talking about it as being cuisine, I was like, wait a minute. And that's because things are changing, but it's to sideline communities and say that there's not enough of them. Well, that's because you killed a lot of them off. And that's because we're scattered all around like a diaspora. That's absurd. That's another reason not to learn not only their own history, but the origin story of human history. And that's a shame.
Yeah. So one of our last questions from the audience, this person is asking, Issa Rae speaks a lot about horizontal networking with peers. You touched a little on that with your comic book. Would you be able to elaborate on your experience with that type of collaboration or the importance of it?
Well, it's mostly the type of networking that's going to go on anyway. A lot of people who are in positions that you are looking forward to telling them about your project may have very little interest of your project, whether it's good or not. They've got a lot on their plate and they've already committed to a lot of things. But being in alignment and on mission with other people that you can work together and you both have the same goals, but you're just maybe working on a project here and it keeps moving it forward, is probably how you're going to get many things made and have some kind of sustainability. So if you look at Spielberg and George Lucas and even Francis Ford Coppola, they all knew each other. They were young filmmakers, young guns, and they got together and started, doing each other's things. And it just turned out that was, a great time for them to be doing that. But we need to think about it and think that the people next to you are probably the new news. So go ahead and lean into it and make sure you have your contract straight, have a conversation about money and ownership way before you get going. So you're clear about it and get those things in writing. And then, yes, network horizontally and move forward as quickly as you can, because there is no ideal relationship. There's just the ideal relationship that can work for you, and hopefully their skill sets are complementary, and get on with it, because everything takes so long.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And just to wrap up our conversation, part of your background and the work that you've done is the creation or co-founding of Color Farm Media. And the website for that talks about bringing about systemic change by shifting narratives. So just to wrap us up, I'm curious about what that shift looks like or means to you personally. Why is that shift so important to bring about change?
Because we're underrepresented and overlooked and undervalued. And if we're going to create the IP of the future, we have to develop and we have to produce together, but we have to do it, and we have to produce premium quality content. That's scripted, that's non-scripted, that's with multicultural characters, storylines for global audiences now. That's what's happening. It's no longer just the national mandate, because although stories and the way American stories travel have been the gold standard, and you can have your point of view about that, but they have been. It's been our strongest soft power. That will not last. We are having more people, because of the internet, be in conversation, and they've learned all the lessons from all the years of listening to great Stevie Wonder and looking at Spielberg movies and looking at all this other stuff. So what you're seeing there is how we see Color Farm, and we are trying to bring greater equity and inclusion, diverse representation. There's no doubt about it. We are trying to do it with a farm system, but we also know that this is the future, that the new Shakespeare's and the new writers, Octavia Butler, Samuel Delaney's, all these people are yet to be discovered. And you should be very excited about being discovered by the world. Whatever's held you back up until now, to feel like you should be included in that conversation, be empowered and take courage and move forward, because it's a different game and all of the libraries that they've had that have been making content all these years, if you try to look at it again, there's so many flaws in it. When I say flaws, meaning for new audiences, they're not looking at that content is the same thing. We watched the Dukes of Hazzard for years and never thought about it. But now you can't have a car flying around with a big old, General Lee with a Confederate flag on it. That's not gonna, you can do it, but that's a limited audience. And if you see some of the detectives we had and the methods they used and the way the patriarchy, that's not wearing well. And you're seeing the way that women had to act and the way they were put into positions of secondary class citizens. That's not so good. And we're not even talking about the whole racial aspect and how we were portrayed as stereotypes. All those libraries are almost dead. You can see them on the classic stations. You might have some cable stuff that's still showing. There's some great Western characters and all that. There's a lot of people don't vibe to that. You are the person that the world is looking for. So step into the light and own yourself, own it. But it's going to be work, and there's still challenges. There always will be for artists, always will. They'll bury us in unmarked graves, but they'll know you're here by your work. And more importantly, you'll be able to say what you wanted. It's more important that you feel connected to the world and that you matter. And I'm here to tell you that you do.
Wow. Thank you so much. There is no more powerful ending than what you just shared. I think it's a beautiful message to our audience. I hope folks are doing what I just did and feverishly writing down your words, because it's amazing. So thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Because I'd like to know, as a creator and a creative, and how has Arizona changed since I've been there? If I left around 81, how's it changed?
Well, I think there are probably better folks than me to answer that question, because I've only been here for the past 10 years. But what I will say is it's so interesting to me to have heard your story of what it was like to grow up here and some of the experiences that you had as a child, because I think in a lot of ways, Flagstaff has changed a lot from that, but that sort of experience maybe has not. Where I think one of the powerful things that a lot of, especially our young people, can take from this conversation is to hear that they're not alone in what they're experiencing now. You were experiencing it then, and some of them are still experiencing it now. And so it's just, it's important and powerful for them to hear stories like yours. As some of the folks are saying and starting to tell some of what it's like here now. It's grown a lot. It has gotten a lot bigger, but it is very, very pricey to live here, and which I think drives home that point of just how important it is to see that representation and to hear stories like yours and know that there is life beyond some of those hardships, but also life that can be made beautiful and more influential because of some of those hardships. So again, just very grateful to you for sharing that story and your narrative.
Wow, I'm looking at the comments, and that's disappointing. Yeah. It is. Corporate and consumerism and all those things, and once they find out the secret of, maybe a secret that people didn't know, how beautiful it was up there, I'm not surprised, because I saw it happen in Sedona before I left, and then now I go to Sedona and I'm like, good Lord, what has happened here? But I think that story can help change that too. I think that we can do things at night that you can't do in the light of day. And that's what story helps, is to reveal the light and maybe make a different way. But that's interesting, because I was hoping that I don't see it as like it wasn't like a Shangri-La, but for me, I think I know that it's so important to who I am. And Philadelphia does a whole other thing for me, but I was already mostly who I was going to be once I got to Philly. And so some of the things, good and bad, I could take in that I wouldn't. I just didn't have the taste for. And if you saw my brothers and sisters together, everybody goes like, you guys are different, and that's because you're from Northern Arizona. There is a calmness and a different awareness. And thank you for Arizona. I'm saying this to Arizona, Northern Arizona, for being a huge part of what's raised me. I would like to think that I have much to give it and much to receive now in my growth. I keep thinking about where I'm going to be and where I'd like to live. And I keep thinking I'd like to be in Arizona. So maybe I'll have to be paying that upgrade, Ricardo. You ain't coming, can't come there broke. By the way, I see also that it's a dark city. It wasn't a dark city when I was there. I remember being dark. And I see that there's other things that I'm fascinated by. I'm glad to see all the runners and everything. They were there before, but now it seems like a big deal. And the groundhogs and the sunflowers, I played in those sunflowers. We used to attack them and cut them down. And they were like, we'd bring them to our dog and they were the soldiers. We'd say, what did we do with them? And she would always demand that we behead them. So we would behead those big old sunflowers. And to this day, I think about running in these sunflowers. And they were so tall and huge, like thing I'd never seen. It was this whole dirt sort of acre in front of us would become sunflowers and become something that was out of a movie, and made that shack and that roach infested place we lived a palace sometimes, and that was beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you for that. I guess I'll see y'all soon.
Yes, absolutely. For our audience, we are excited to be, this is just the first of our conversations with Miss Alexander. She will be joining us again and actually joining us in person as we head further into the summer months. So we are excited for that and to have you come back and join us and experience Flagstaff again. So we very much look forward to that.
I do too. I can't wait. And thank you so much for the invitation. I love you too. I love you too. Thank you. Thanks for everyone and all the good questions. Next time, maybe I'll ask y'all questions and we'll have a back and forth. I'll say, hey, what's going on here? And how could we build this? And tell me how this is working out and what's the structural. I would love to know some of the things that are happening there so we can educate everybody on the Flagstaff. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Miss Bernadine, do you have any closing thoughts, or would you like to close us out?
We are just blessed for having this, and you hit it. You again, I said it before we went live, but this sister has such a precious soul and spirit, and it is Flagstaff. It is Northern Arizona. If you could look and see beyond the other challenges that we have, and if you just stand within yourself, you get a sense of that calmness that you spoke of, Sister Erika, and you were just so spot on. We are truly blessed to have your presence here with us this evening, and we're excited about your August visit, and we're planning. Be prepared, be well rested. We have plans for you.
Are you kidding? I'm for sure.
Okay. We want you to engage with the students on campus, particularly in the communication and business colleges. We want you, of course, engaged and have an opportunity to meet and greet the Flagstaff community, and we just have plans. So it's a matter of, we're going to have to say, okay, we're not going to have time to do all of this, but please know that we're looking forward to it. I see our chief just made that comment of, we're looking forward to your visit. And for those of you who thought it not robbery to come and join us this evening to hear from Miss Erika Alexander. Thank you so much. And please share the news, because this will end up on our YouTube channel. So others who missed it live will be able to go back and see this. This is a first, and we're excited. The Live Black experience. I can't think of who would be the best first celebrity for us to have on our show. So we're really excited about that. So thank you so much, sister, for coming and
Thank
and
you.
helping us to get ready to welcome you back home in
I'm
person.
I'm
We're going to
grateful.
make a big deal of it.
Thank you. And my mom's gonna be with me and family, and oh yeah, Miss Sammy coming back, and she's getting ready for it. And I love how somebody said the hoot nanny and the shenanigans of smoothing. I'm ready for fried bread. I'm ready for woo, I can't wait. I get my stomach ready. Take all
Yes.
my designs.
And I think what will be probably the highlight of that is to have both of you at the Murdoch, to come back and yeah, and set foot in that space. So it truly is going to be a wonderful homecoming for Miss Erika Alexander.
Mm.
Community, please come out, and when you see those activities posted, join us. It's always at the end of this that we like to show and express our gratitude for everything good. And this truly has been a wonderful way to begin after Juneteenth, where we're still celebrating who we are, our triumphs, our what we have overcome. And this sister, we're very proud of, and she is Flagstaff's native daughter.
Ah, that is true, child. Everywhere I see me, you see me. I'm talking about Arizona,
I
boy.
love it.
They
I
know.
love it.
And you know
I
what? I
love
gotta say, we gotta at some point talk about the Hillary Clinton's um saying that Arizona, those stripes, that's Arizona. I designed that. Tony Parade's name on it, but I designed that and I put Arizona everywhere I can. So it became her. So Obama has his hope. Hillary, she's got those. That's because
Yes.
yeah, that's Arizona.
Oh
It's
my
in
gosh.
it was her campaign poster for 2017.
Yes.
Brought it back for 2016.
Wow.
Yes.
Can we
I'll send
invite
a few
you?
when I'm there. You know what? I should send a few when I'm there and have them sign and give them out as whatever, so people can have the vintage, but the original ones that were
Yes.
printed on recycled paper with veggie ink. It was a family printer and made in the USA, shaped like a stamp because
Yes.
it brings a message to the world. The picture we use is from Brian Adams took. He was the guy who wrote "Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman?"
Yes.
And it was for her moonshot, which was to find a cure for cancer. And although she didn't get a chance, everything is in that poster. And so I'll bring a few so we can make
Yes.
them off and people can get a piece of history. But it's got the Arizona, those stripes that's in there.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. Oh wow. August 25th through the 29th. That is going to be a fabulous time. And again, everybody, thank you for joining us. Sister
Thank you.
Erika, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. We admire your strength, your creativity, your wisdom. Um, we admire you.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Bernadine. Thank you, Cara. I had a great time. It was an excellent interview. And, you're the new Oprah. And so,
she
let's do it
is.
again soon.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
speaking that over her.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Fantastic.
yes.
Very good.
Well, thank you, LBE, Flagstaff community. We love
Thank
you.
you.
We love you, Erica. And as we
Sister
always say at
Kimberly,
the end of
Sister
this,
Kimberly,
go
thank
in
you.
grace.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.